Support for this episode comes from Signature Bank.
Hey, this is Gary Head at Signature Bank of Arkansas. We founded Signature Bank in 2005 with local ownership to serve our communities with the best bankers with the most authority to do business. We have succeeded in growing our bank to over $875 million in assets. We have locations in Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville, Brinkley, and we have recently expanded to Harrison and Jonesboro. We have 176 teammates in climbing. Our teammates love our communities and the customers that we serve. We're always here to serve and eager to do so. As Chairman and CEO, I welcome your call to have the opportunity to serve you. Please call 479-684-3700 or visit online at signature.bank and tell them that you heard about us at IM Northwest Arkansas. Signature Bank of Arkansas is a member of the FDIC and an equal housing lender.
Hey folks, Randy Wilburn here. I've been toying with the idea of creating a podcast episode Hall of Fame for the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. I figured I would start keeping track of not only the most downloaded episodes that we've shared, but also the episodes that made the most impact on me and others. While I'm excited to share the first entry into our podcasting Hall of Fame, I am equally saddened by the reason that I'm doing this now. 2 years ago, Mark Zweig, who many of you have heard me mention on this podcast, introduced me to a dynamo of an entrepreneur named Brant Barnes. I had the best time sitting down with Brant in his shelter insurance office here in Fayetteville while he told me one story after another, going all the way back to his childhood and ending up at the age of 41 with multiple food franchises, a ton of rental properties, and an extremely successful insurance agency. Brant moved me with his energy and stories. I moved all of my personal and business insurance to him with shelter. The other thing that struck me about Brant was that he was always willing to give of his time and talent to his teammates across all of his businesses and to special organizations. He was definitely a businessman that made a difference in the communities he served in. We lost Brant a few weeks back. He crashed his plane on approach to Drake Field. It was dark, and he was in an unfamiliar plane. That's all I'm going to say for now. I want to share a wonderful letter written by Mark Zweig that serves as both a tribute to Brant and a reminder that every day is precious. After I share this letter with you, we will go right into the original episode 119 of the podcast entitled How NWA Serial Entrepreneur Brant Barnes Found Success in Authenticity. This will be the first entrance into our I Am Northwest Arkansas Podcast Hall of Fame. If you need some encouragement, and maybe you have struggled in business or in life, this is the episode to listen to. Please consider sharing this message with a friend. We could all use a reminder of how precious each day is. Godspeed, Brant. Tomorrow May Never Come by Mark Zweig. None of us knows how much time we have, so don't put off making the changes you need to make in your life. On January 6th, my wife and I spent about an hour and a half in the office of our friend and insurance agent, Brant Barnes, talking about flying, what makes for a good pilot, a crash he was in 8 years before and survived, problems with the alternator on his plane, and how it could function even if it wasn't working. We talked about life, death, life insurance, business, cars, and his plans for this year, which included sailing a boat and going to the Bahamas, among other things, and how this was the year he was going to spend less time working and more time with his family. Brant and I were going to go down to South Fayetteville so he could show me his new business he had just launched. The business is going to provide reconditioned cars to Papa John's, Domino's, and other pizza business owners who offer delivery as part of their offerings. He thought he could do as many as 1,500 cars a year for them. I thought if my wife didn't go along, I could maybe catch a ride back to town from him when we were done. But we had to change our plans. A new area representative from Papa John's was in town. Brant is co-owner of 8 Papa John's franchises. and Brant had to fly him back to Stuttgart, Arkansas, so we rescheduled for another day. Shortly after 6 p.m., another friend of mine, Bert Hanna, owner of Hanna's Candle Company and an avid flyer himself, he has his own landing strip at his house, sent out a group text message that read, "The plane crash tonight by my house wasn't me. Thank God." Our first thoughts were those of gratitude. But then my wife said, "Oh no, what about Brant?" Well, a few short minutes later, another person on the list chimed in and said, "It was Brant Barnes. I don't think he made it." We were both sick. It was Brant, and he was killed in the crash. The Bonanza plane he was flying was a new one to him. He was a couple miles from Drake Field, had been cleared to land, and then dropped off the radar. Reports from witnesses said the plane was sputtering at about 500 feet, and he hit some trees and went down. We think he was trying to switch to another fuel tank when he crashed. It was dark, and he was in an unfamiliar plane. At the age of 43, one of the most entrepreneurial people I know, a guy who ran 7 miles a day, who spoke to my students every year, who gave away hundreds of pizzas during COVID, who spent hours with his people teaching them about business and life, who gave former addicts a chance to redeem themselves, who was a leader in the Salvation Army's quest to feed the poor and homeless, was gone. For Brant, there was no tomorrow. No more time to spend with the people he loved. The moral of the story? Don't put off making the changes you need to make in your life. Don't let the trivial stuff preoccupy your mind and upset you. Do help other people and do some good. Don't put off making things right with people you care about. You never know when your time is up. Sonia and I sure didn't think we would be going to Brant's funeral when we were sitting in his office, laughing that morning. Today is the day that could be your last. Get the most out of it.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you for another episode of the podcast. I'm here today with Brant Barnes, and Brant is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. I connected with him, as I always do, because through somebody else that I know, and that individual, just a quick shout out to Mark Zweig for introducing us. And I got a chance to sit down and chat with Brant prior to us doing this podcast to learn a little bit more about him. And, you know, Brant he's a Papa John's franchisee. He also owns a lot of real estate, and he is a insurance agent. He runs a shelter insurance that's right here in downtown Fayetteville. And so I'm sitting in his beautiful office right off of Spring Street and finally getting a chance to learn a little bit more about him. And I wanted to introduce him to the I Am Northwest Arkansas audience and tell his story to everyone here. And as we always do, our focus at I Am Northwest Arkansas is on the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here in the Ozarks. And hopefully we'll hear a little bit of all of that from Brant as he shares his story. And so without further ado, Brant Barnes, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Pumped to be here and got to speak to Mark's class. That's where this kind of came from. Right. Mark asked me to speak to entrepreneurs at the college, and I work with a lot of the kids over there. And I got 3 classes in a row with Mark, and he heard the same stories over and over, but he reached out to you and just, he kind of knows I've been in the weeds of entrepreneurship and had my ups and downs and appreciates that. So, yeah, no, you've done a lot. I mean, in your short 41 years on this earth, and not that I put your age out there, but I mean, you're still a lot of life in the tank and a lot more to do. But I'd love for you just to share, and we talked about this earlier,
for you to share your superhero origin story with our audience. And that's the one question that we always ask on this podcast, because I believe that everybody's hero's journey is important. But I would love for you just to kind of give us the Cliff Note version of, how you got here, right? I mean, It's not like you woke up one day and all of a sudden we're like, I'm just going to buy some Papa John's. I'm going to go buy some real estate. I'm going to, be an insurance agent. I'm going to be a pilot. I mean, all of these things kind of built on the other. And so I'd love for you just to kind of give our audience a glimpse into who Brant Barnes is.
Well, I think it starts with exposure as a kid, just exposure. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you know? What does your dad do? What does your mom do? What does your aunt do? What do your friends' parents do? And I grew up in Mountain Home, Arkansas. I'm just an Arkansas kid, we're 30 miles from Missouri, but what I knew was Springfield, Missouri, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Memphis, Little Rock. That's what I knew. That's where we went. That's what we did. Dad was an avid Razorback fan. So as you are in Arkansas, we're kind of a one-state team. And so we were huge Razorback football fans. And my dad and I grew up flying. My dad was a pilot. He flew in sales for 8 years for a company out of Cotter, Arkansas. And he decided after traveling for a long time that he really wanted to settle down and be around. He was gone 2 weeks and home 2 weeks. And that was just not good I had two older sisters. So my dad in 1983, 84, interviewed with Shelter Insurance to be an agent in Mountain Home. And it was, he had a district sales manager that said, can you come by and interview this afternoon at 5:00? I'm at the Ramada Inn. And my dad said, I've got my son with me, but I can come. I got my son. He said, bring him. So I was 4 years old at the Ramada Inn in Mountain Home. And my dad interviewed with Bob Lewis, and they hired him for a Shelter Insurance agency in 83. My dad started with Shelter then, still with them, planning to retire July 1st this year. Been there 38 years. I guess that's the math. I think it's 38. Hired a lady named Vicky that was my dad's secretary when she was 18, and she's still there, which is amazing. She picked me up from school, things like that. So my dad was a hybrid business owner. That's what I'd call it. He owned his own agency in Mountain Home, Shelter Insurance, and I grew up watching him. He never lost the flying bug, so we flew a small plane everywhere we went. And what I just knew was Arkansas. I knew Arkansas. I mean, I knew Batesville, I knew Conway, I knew Greenbrier, I knew Mountain View. I mean, we all know somebody. And through Shelter, it's kind of tight-knit. We know the agents in Jonesboro. We know the agent in Batesville. The agent in Searcy's a good friend of mine. And so I kind of, through Shelter and then through traveling in sports, we played all these teams. So we began to play Rogers and Little Rock Catholic and go to Marion from time to time, whatever. Mostly Arkansas. We never really ventured into Missouri. But, so I grew up, one of my dad's best friends was an older gentleman that was best friends with Eddie Sutton. So he was tied to Charles Ballantyne, was a guy I met when I was like 5 years old. Charles Ballantyne stayed at my house when I was 6, and he was my idol. I mean, he was just the man, and so the older gentleman that was friends with Eddie Sutton had a jet, and we used to get to fly and go to games. And then we went to Oklahoma State when he was friends with him. And so, just Razorback was in my blood. Mr. McLean was a businessman. I looked up to him. I was like, I want one of those planes. I want one of those. I want to do what he does. And I would ask him questions of how'd you get in the business? What'd you do? And I just, from an early age, I knew I wanted to be a business owner. I knew I wanted to own businesses, and what I wanted was freedom. I wanted to be able to go anywhere in the world, anytime, and I didn't want money to be a barrier. And I wanted to live a life that's like, whatever I want to do it. And so I knew I wanted to be a pilot. I knew I wanted to own businesses. I didn't know what type. I didn't really know where. I just knew that. And so, I played all sports in high school. I was good at everything, great at nothing. I could play anything from racquetball to tennis. I was catcher, state championship team. 1997, won the state championship. Not to veer off, but just crazy how small state it is and small an area. When I came to college, we won the state championship. We beat Sheridan in the finals, and we got in a fight afterwards. And it was well known. It was a big brawl, but some people got hurt and stuff. I come to college over here, and my fraternity brothers, 4 of them were on that team. And we all ended up great friends. And bygones be bygones. I flew Pine Bluff, Stuttgart, and Benton last Thursday, and a guy picked us up as a banker, and he's from Sheridan, and his brothers, it's just how the state ties together. But I knew I wanted to own businesses. I got out of high school in 97. We had come to Fayetteville for every game. My dad and I sat through every Razorback football game, and that's just what we did. We were here for the game. We tailgated a little bit, but we were here for who's the player, where's he from? He's from Jinx, Oklahoma. How'd we get him? What are his skill sets? We would go an hour before the game and see pregame. We wanted to see him kick and punt, and how's so-and-so looking today? And I don't know, my dad and I enjoyed the game. And so that was probably my fondest memories of like Fayetteville, Arkansas, was like he and I going to ball games. So I knew I got out of college, or I got out of high school in 97. I went to UCA for a year and a half. I got a scholarship, or got pretty much preferred walk-on kind of deal. at UCA to deep snap.
Okay.
I weighed 225 pounds at that time.
Yep.
Played middle linebacker and deep snapper at UCA, mostly just was a deep snapper, and met people from all over Arkansas. There was guys from Rogers. I learned at UCA that, those guys are just as big as the guys at Fayetteville.
Yeah.
They're just not as fast.
Right.
So they're 2/10 slower in the 40. They bench press 50 pounds less, and they're about 2 inches shorter, but they're close.
Right.
And it was athletic. So we did that for a year and a half. And then I just said, man, I'm going to Fayetteville. I'm ready. And I skipped out that Christmas, I guess in 99, moved back up here and went to school here. What's interesting about this for me is that seeing Northwest Arkansas from afar is different. I was from Mountain Home. We flew here, into Drake Field, got a ride to the game, and went home. And I knew Herman's, I knew, this, that, but all I knew was that this little piece. Then when you come to college here, okay, now I got Dixon.
Yeah.
I can put that in my bag,
Right.
And so I'm here and I'm learning Dixon and I'm learning a little bit about it. I worked in Springdale for a guy named Bill Bakewell. It was tied to baseball. In my senior year, he introduced me to Coach DeBryan. I started going pheasant hunting with a bunch of guys, Scott Tabor and a bunch of guys that played baseball. Met Kevin McReynolds and Johnny Ray, got connected with those guys. So it just blossomed from here, kind of my meeting the people from Northwest Arkansas. And so from there, I get out of school in 2001 and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I think that's the moment where I was just like, I just knew I wanted to own businesses. I knew I wanted to fly to work. And I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to chart my own path. I didn't want anybody in front of me saying, you can and can't do this.
Right.
And so I really needed out of Fayetteville. I really needed out of Mountain Home at the time. And I was like, man, I'm going to look around and see. There was a friend of mine that wanted to do a startup in Memphis. And they said, if you'll go there, we'll get you started. So I moved to Memphis. I moved to East Memphis and didn't know a soul, didn't know anybody over there. It was scary. First time I'd really ventured out where if my car broke or something happened, I didn't really know who to get a hold of.
Right.
I had connections in Fayetteville. I had connections in Mountain Home, all over the state, but Memphis was new territory. 6 months into being over there, my dad reached out and said, hey, there's a shelter insurance agency in Senatobia, Mississippi that is opening up and they'll interview you if you want to interview. And there's a guy that's retiring, older gentleman that's retiring. I said, I'll go to the interview. Went to the interview. They got me to a second interview. They hired me. And I'm like, where's this? It was 30 miles straight south of Memphis down Interstate 55, Senatobia, Mississippi. I took over for an older gentleman that had been there for 32 years named O.C. Burns, and he took me in. He just took me in and kind of helped me get that going. So from there, I started my venture into shelter insurance in 2005, moving to a place I knew nobody. And,
So just so for the audience sake, when you say they hired you to run that agency, right?
Yeah. In that situation, Shelter owns the client base.
Okay.
So they pay off Mr. Burns. He leaves. They put me in charge of, a couple thousand policies. I got a kind of ready-made business, and now it's up to me to do whatever I want with it from there. And they want me to grow it and add my own team. But, I'm an independent contractor and own my own business, and I'm in Senatobia, Mississippi. So I start with a little client base, and then here we go. And we get started.
Yeah.
And so that started that in 2002. And that was new territory for sure. I had no idea what I was doing. I did it for 3 years. That's what I was doing. Now, I was buying and selling cars. I've been buying and selling trucks, four-wheelers, anything I can get a hold of since I was 10 years old. I've been reading magazines about real estate and everything. I mean, the ambition is there. It was just where do I go with it? So I was buying that. I was buying stuff. I bought a condo in Destin, Florida. One of the best deals I've ever done in my life. I got lucky. Bought that in 2004. It was the first thing I bought when I got the job. I bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo in Sandpiper Cove right in the heart of Destin. Held it for 2 years and was able to really make some money. Just got lucky and got a huge offer, and I sold it. I took that money in 2005, and my dad was in on it. I'd split it with him, but I bought 2 rental houses, and a buddy of mine, a good friend of mine that was a banker, said, we ought to start a Papa John's. And I'm like, yeah, we should. I'm like, well, and then I'm like, well, hold on. Why should we start a Papa John's? He's like, because it's really good.
Yeah.
I'm like, it is good. So let's do it.
Right.
So it's myself, this banker, and a third guy. We drive to Louisville, Kentucky. They do I'm in insurance. I got about 3 rental houses now. I'm buying and selling trucks. And I go to Louisville, Kentucky, and we come out of this one day. They kind of sell us on the franchise. We were going to put it in Senatobia, Mississippi. That's where we were going to put it. And they're like, the demographics aren't good. You don't need to be there. If you're going to do a store, you need to put it in Hernando, Mississippi, which is halfway up to Memphis.
Okay.
A little bit bigger town, but it's right along Interstate 55. This all goes down Interstate 55 out of Memphis. So I look at the guys, what do you think? One of the guys says, well, they wanted $250,000 pretty much to get open. That's what it was going to take. We needed $75,000 cash, and we had to beg for $175 to borrow.
Okay.
Because people don't want to borrow money on restaurants very much. They just don't.
Sure.
So one guy goes, I don't have 25 grand. And I'm like, well, why'd you come to Louisville? You know what I mean? Like, what'd you ride up here for?
Right,
the beer?
right.
I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
you know? So he's out. And my other buddy, who's the banker, is a Senatobia guy. And he says, if it's not in Senatobia, I'm out. I don't want to do it 15 miles. Okay. So here I am. It wasn't really my idea, but I'm that guy that once you plan it in my head, it's happening.
Yeah.
I'm getting a pizza place.
Right.
So I start thinking, and I'd met someone. My wife had met a friend from the gym. Her husband, they kept telling us we should meet. So I meet him. His name's Mike Hensley. And we meet. And Mike went to school at Southern Miss for architectural engineering, got a 4-year degree, came out, worked 6 months, didn't like it, quit, decided to go to law school at Ole Miss, goes to law school for 4 years, passes the bar, becomes an attorney, and 6 months into being an attorney decides it's not for him. So he and I meet, and he quits his new law job to start a pizza store.
Wow.
And his wife hated me. Pretty much. I mean, kind of like, what are you thinking? Like, he just spent 10 years in school, and now you're going to pull him out to start this pizza gig. So he and I meet. We start talking about how we're going to do this deal. And I'm like, and he's like, I'm in. So he's like, they didn't want to loan us the money. So I'm now stuck at how am I going to get the money?
Right.
I think this is an interesting story, and I have to say it because it really did chart something for me in learning about mentorship. But we're kind of stuck. We can't get started. We don't know how to get this store yet because I can't get the money necessarily. I meet an older gentleman in Senatobia, Mississippi. His name is James May. And he owned about 3 pharmacies. He had 14 or 15 video shops, 150 rental houses. And just the way it was in a small town in Senatobia, Mississippi, he was the richest man that ever lived. It's small, big fish, small pond.
Yeah,
I mean, they were like, oh, this man's mythical.
Yeah.
So he comes by I called him one day because he had a piece of land that I was interested in buying to build an office for my insurance agency. He comes and picks me and another guy up. We go look at the land. We're done in 10, 15 minutes. We head back to the office, and he says, another guy gets out of the truck, and I just looked at him and I said, Mr. May, I said, I've heard a lot about you. And I said, I really want to be like you. Like, I want to do what you do. And he's like, really? I said, yes, sir. He's like, it's not as easy as you think. And I said, I understand, but like, how'd you get started? If you don't mind me asking, what could I do to be like you? He took the drive, put it in drive, and he started driving. And he drove around for 3 hours. And he showed me everything he bought, and he talked about how he got here. And he told me his story. Mm-hmm. I mean, drove a bicycle from some small town in Mississippi into Senatobia in 1976 and was a pharmacist. And he just told me his story. And at the end of that, at 3 hours, we were sitting there, and he said, I got that bank there. They bought from me, and I'm going to build this over here. And I looked at him and I said, man, what I want to do is a Papa John's pizza. And he said, Papa John's, that's my favorite pizza. And I was like, man, all right. And he's like, where you want to do it? I said, they want me to do it in Hernando. He goes, I told you I'm closing these video shops. They were VHS shops with the tanning beds, and he was closing them in 2005. It's over. He said, I got a video shop right on the corner at Commerce, across from Kroger and AutoZone in Hernando. He goes, I'll put the building up as collateral. You and your buddy put 25 in. I'll put 25 in. We'll be third partners. You guys will rent from me there. And he's like, we'll do a Papa John's. And we shook hands in 3 hours. We shook hands.
That was it.
He's still my partner today. That'll be 16 years, September 15th. I opened that store in Papa John's, Hernando, Mississippi, the day my son was born, September 15th of 2005. And we opened at 3 o'clock. My son was born at 10 a.m. that morning. Mr. May and I have talked every month for 16 years. He's kind of like a second dad, just a great guy to lean on. And just, he told me, I'm never going to make a pizza. I'm never going to come by there.
Right.
That's not my gig.
Right.
My gig is to put the capital up, and my partner and I's job was to run it. And, he and I have been, just a great guy and just through mentorship. And he said to me, you're the greatest partner I've ever had. You're the most hands-off person I've never had really problems with. I've never, and he's still a partner today. That's the only store that we're that way on. I don't have any others. But that was 2005. It was a couple years. It was a train wreck. The first 2 or 3 years, a train wreck. I had no idea how to manage people. Had no idea what I was doing. At that time, I had 10 or 11 rental houses. I still had insurance going on. I'm working insurance during the day. I'm doing pizza at night, and we're breaking even at best. We're barely paying the bills because I didn't know how to manage people. I had no idea how to manage people, and I didn't know it, and I didn't know how to run the pizza business. I didn't know anything about it. It took me 3 years to figure that out a little bit. I hired a guy to work for me in insurance, so he was selling. I was handing him deals. By 8, 9, and 10, we began to really learn how to run the pizza business. By this time, I'm up to 22, 24 houses. I'm still buying houses left and right. I mean, just pulling my hair out, doing 14 things that I shouldn't be doing, buying and selling Japanese mini trucks. I mean, I just keep my eye off the ball.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of going fast, and we can go back wherever you want. But so in 2010, we finally got the store making money, and we finally feel like, okay, in 08, 09, I'd hired a really good guy named Sean Jenkins to sell insurance for me. I was meeting people. I was handing him deals. He was closing them. We won Agent of the Year for the United States with Shelter Insurance in 08. And the pizza store started doing well as well, good at the same time. And, we came in second in 9 and 10 with Shelter Insurance, second out of about, 1,400 agents across the country.
And I don't want this to be lost on anyone. 2008, 2009, 2010 were some of the toughest years, period.
Absolutely.
In our country.
Absolutely.
We talk about the financial meltdown, the crisis and everything, yet you were figuring out ways to excel even during a downtime.
Sure. And, the more aggressive, the more proactive you are, the better things are going to happen. And you just, and look, I had 20, 25 houses at that time too.
Yeah.
And I had about 7 or 8 I was flipping, and I couldn't sell them. So what do? I just rent them, put them on rental, and you just, no matter what happens to you, you've just got to pull over and go, okay, what's next? Okay, now what's next? I can't change the past. What's next?
Right.
And I just think that's what's important. And so I learned a lot of lessons right there in that 8 to 10 range. In 2010, we decided now we know how to do one store. Let's do a lot, which was not the smartest move, but we signed a deal to open Searcy and Cabot, Arkansas, Papa John's. I had my young guy killing it in insurance. I was checking on him and running that. When we made the deal on Searcy and Cabot, Mountain Home came up for sale. I'm like, well, I got to buy that. That's where I'm from. So I bought that Papa John's. Hot Springs came up for sale. So I bought Hot Springs. And then we opened Searcy. Then we opened Cabot. So now I'm at 5 stores. By 2011, I'm at 5 stores. And so I had gotten my pilot's license out of high school and college. And so I was flying at the time. We bought a little Cherokee 180 that I had at Tunica, Mississippi. So that's where the plane was at. And we would fly to Mountain Home. We fly to Searcy and we fly to Hot Springs. And that's how we got to the stores and back. So I was living the dream, man. I'm flying to work in my little plane.
Right.
And, don't get me wrong, man. Like I'd be in those stores till 10:30 at night, getting the plane at 11:15, land at midnight. It was long days.
Better than driving though.
It was better than driving. And, sometimes you can ask my partner this. We flew so many times from Searcy or Hot Springs back, and it'd be midnight. And it was just a place, Tim McGraw says this. He flies the Cirrus SR-22, same plane I have. And he says, there's no more peaceful place than me in my airplane at 11,000 feet because nobody knows who I am and everybody leaves me alone.
Right.
And he's like, nobody can get me. Even their traffic controllers. He's like, some of them know who I am. And sometimes you can tell they're like, okay, Mr. McGraw, they'll say it. But he said, for the most part, I'm up there away from everybody. And I think sometimes coming home at night in that airplane were these moments where I'm because the lights, you can see Mountain Home, you can see Little Rock, you can see Jackson, Mississippi from 8,000 feet.
Right.
At night.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just a time for reflection. It was a time to just say, what the heck am I doing here? Because it was stressful, So 2012, my agent that had worked for me got offered an agency from Shelter.
Okay.
So they hired him. And I kind of lost him. And when I lost him, I felt lost a little bit. I had all my eggs in kind of one basket, I think, with him. And, it was just that time where I was like, all right, I've been here 10 years, close to 10 years in Mississippi. I'm ready to go back. I'm ready. And I was like, I want to move one time and I want to live in Fayetteville. I don't want to live in Rogers. I don't want to live in Springdale. I want to live in Fayetteville. It's just something about the place. I loved it. And I just knew. And I told Shelter that. I was like, if I get a shot, I'll go to Fayetteville. That's it. And it just so happened that in 2012, Bill Shackelford, who was on MLK out by Whataburger, been here 32 years. Him and Lola May had an amazing agency here. And he decided to retire. And our vice president of marketing called me and said, all right, your shot. Bill's retiring. You want it. And I said, well, let me think about it. And I got home, talked to my wife, and I'm like, we're going. At that time, I could fly from Fayetteville to Hot Springs, Searcy, Cabot, Mountain Home, just like I could from Tunica.
Sure.
I could always go back to Memphis once a month, check on rental houses, check on the pizza business. So that was kind of my philosophy. I'm like, cool, I'll come back. So in April of 12, I moved back here.
Yep.
And I was able to transfer kind of insurance to here. Still had 25 rental houses down there, had 5 pizza stores at the time. I get back up here. We moved our corporate pizza office here. So everything bases out of here. Now it bases out of our office here. At that time, it was down there. So I got back up here, hired some really good people in the insurance business. We've had an amazing run up here, but probably about 14, I started flipping some houses up here, got in business with some other guys. So, Mr. Mike Hensley, my original partner, we're 50-50 on the 4 stores that are Hernando, Searcy, Cabot, Hot Springs. And when I got back up here, one of my lifelong friends who I played baseball with, grew up with since kindergarten, Heath Stanley, he and I partnered up and he wanted to get in the pizza business. So he bought my other partner's 50% of Mountain Home. And then we opened Van Buren, Muskogee, bought Branson, and bought West Memphis. Had 9 stores. By like 3 years ago, 17, we had 9 stores, and we ended up selling Muskogee and down to 8. So we have 8 stores, 50-50 with Heath on Van Buren, Mountain Home, West Memphis, Branson, and then 50-50 my other partner. Still in insurance business. We've doubled the agency since we've been here. Bought some real estate up here. I've had Airbnb and VRBOs in Mountain View and Destin. I'm a car dealer. I just buy and sell and trade. And there's 2 things that I think that really determined my life really was what I was into was I wanted a horse trade. I wanted to buy and sell, and I wanted to flip. I think that's the basis of business in general. It's just a horse trade. I'll give you a sack of barley and you give me 2 gold pieces and then I'll go trade it for something else. That's really what was like my passion, you know what I'm saying, for business. And and I'm an Arkansas guy too. Like I love Arkansas and that. So that's where I'm at today. We've spent a lot of time in the last 3 years getting from out of control to organized.
Sure.
And sometimes like you kind of have to almost pull everything out of the garage to put it back and organize it. And that's what I've been doing. So.
Okay. All right. So getting back to your story, which has been really exciting, and I'm just I don't know if anybody else is benefiting from this, but I'm taking a million notes here as Brant shares with me how he has built his empire, if you will. But one thing that continues to kind of stick out to me is just the importance of relationships. And I'd love for you just to kind of talk about, how you've continued to develop those relationships on a personal, but even on a business level, because it seems like that's been one of the key ingredients to your success.
Well, the first thing you learn about relationships is you think about the way others treat you. That's the first thing I think of with relationships. What do I think of this person or that person, and why? Why did I look up to this gentleman? Why? And I think that what you find is you've got to be a giver. And you've got to give first. You've got to bring value to other people. If you don't bring value to other people, then they don't have any reason to help you, really. And I think that sometimes we go with a taker mentality. We go to people and say, how can you help me? And then, maybe one day I'll help you too. But if you go to people and say, let me just help you. Let me help you any way I can. What can I do for you? And so I think that's one is like, and then from there, the minute you meet people, you've got to really study them. You've got to really say, I want to do business with great people. I want integrity. I've always said this. I've really had 3 partners in my life. My dad, Mike, and Heath were really the 3 people I've ever been in business with. And I've always said that if I can't give you $10,000 and say, hey, bring it back to me, by the end of October, no contract, no nothing. Right. I throw you a band of 10 grand and I have any doubt that you're going to bring me that money by the end of October, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm completely out. I don't want anything to do with this. No matter how much money we can make, it's not worth it. My life's not worth it to live with that stomach ache and worry. So I think that you have to analyze every relationship that you have. And I go back, Mr. May, there's a guy named Rhodes Thompson that owned a bunch of AT&T stores, and he and I ate lunch every month. And he was good. He was good at what he does. He'd always tell me, he's like, do something well and do it over and over and over. Do something well and do it over and over and over. When I met him, he had 24 AT&T stores. Over an 8-year period, he grew it to 116 stores, and he sold them. He's from Helena, Arkansas. You meet him, he's just, hi, I'm Rhodes Thompson. And he is who he is.
Yeah.
But he's real and he's legit, and he was doing it. He was living it, and I was seeing it. Another was one of my wife's best friend, Terry Kerr. Terry Kerr's a guy in Memphis that has built like an absolute beast of a business in the rental property business. He buys houses in inner city Memphis, fixes them up, sells them to an investor, and then manages them. And he's just a rock star, man. I mean, just a rock star. But what I had to learn was Terry and I would eat lunch once a month for 8 years, and his business was booming, man, booming. And I always had to think like, why would he want to go to lunch with me? Because like, if I go to lunch and I try to sell him something, or I try to ask favors from him,
right,
he's going to quit asking me to lunch.
Yeah.
But if in those conversations I can add value, then he's going to want to keep going to lunch with me. And I remember one time he used to complain about this girl that worked, an older lady that worked for him that just didn't do a very good job. But it was like a friend's mom. And he's like, well, Donna, and oh gosh, Donna. And one day I looked at him, I said, man, if you don't do something about Donna, I don't want to eat with you anymore. Because I'm tired of hearing about it. Mm-hmm. You need to deal with it. And he's like, all right. And so it was about 3 or 4 months later, he's like, Donna went somewhere else to work. And he's like, dude, it was the best one of the, and he's like, I got this new vibrant person and they're killing it. And so, I felt like I had value, and sometimes I think in the world of when you deal with entrepreneurs and you deal with wealthier people, they're guarded. They're going to guard themselves. You know, I see it personally. I don't mean this mean, but I go to a chamber event or I go to things and it's like I have to leave because like 9 people have already tried to hit me up and trying to sell me something. And I don't even know who they are. Mm-hmm. That's not how you do it, man. Yeah. You get to know me, I get to know you, and then we let business happen naturally. Yeah. And I think that a lot of wealthier, successful entrepreneurs they're going to hide in the shadows. You don't see them just out there everywhere. The ones that are doing it. Yeah. You don't, because they're busy and they got a million things going on. But if you can provide value and you can help them, then that's a different story. But I think a lot of people go with that taker approach. Let me go hit this guy up because he has 300 employees and I could get a big lick and make a big sales on this. I'm like, how about this? How about you go get to know that guy, figure out how you can help him, and at some point ask him or he'll ask you about doing business. And so I think that relationships are hugely important. And I think that it takes time. And it takes time. And, you know, you always hear about like the emotional bank account. Like, are you putting debits in or credits? I mean, which one are you doing? Because if your account's bankrupt with that person, you're in trouble. Yeah. Because when you go to call on some money, there's no money in there because you've never done anything for them. And so, and that doesn't mean like, you know, quid pro, whatever you say that.
Quid
like,
pro quo. Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's like that. I just mean that like always be thinking like, you know, what value do I bring? What value do I bring to my wife? You know, I mean,
I love that and if I could add, you know, one of the reasons why I did this podcast was because I like storytelling. I like doing podcasting and it's something that I'm good at, but I just figured I know everybody's got a story to tell. Sure. And that's actually what's opened the doors for me to meet so many people, because people are always saying, how do you know all these people? And it's like, oh, just because I've talked to them, you know, and I've become friends with people. Sure. And, you know, leverage was a relationship with Mark, but I've already put in all the credits with him over 24 years. Sure. So I can make some withdrawals now, and I don't feel like, oh man, I shouldn't be doing this because, you know, he's a mentor of mine, or I mean, he's a friend, but you know, he's also a mentor. And so I think that's an important message that people need to hear. And I love being able to have conversations like these, because there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast and just listen to any type of information in general in terms of figuring out ways for them to advance themselves and be better. Sure. And I'm doing that. So even just sitting here listening to you is fuel for me to say, oh, okay, here's some things that I could do differently in certain relationships that I want. And if I'm going down the road like you went down and I'm trying to build something, then, you know, I need to be very methodical about how I do it. And I need to be giving as much value as possible from my end, even if I don't think I have something to give.
Sure. And let it be authentic and genuine. And let it find its path. Let it find it. I didn't like set up this meeting with Mr. May to like try to manipulate him into letting me have a pizza store or helping me get started. I didn't. It naturally happened, right? And when he bet on me, I felt obligated to win for him. He put his neck on the line for me. I got you. He told me he wasn't going to make pizzas. He never has. All good, you know. And you know, I think that that's what's important, is that you be you, you know, you be genuine, you be authentic, and you truly have the best interest of everybody in mind, and let the cards fall where they may. But sometimes we force things and that's not there maybe, you know? So I think that's what's important, is like, be you, be authentic, be genuine, and that'll come out. They'll know it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. So, I mean, again, you know, since it's still in the midst of this, at the time that we're recording this, it's March 2nd of 2021. We're still dealing with the pandemic. We're still dealing with the fallout and the residual effects of the pandemic. How have you maintained your business and just maintained what you're doing through this time period?
Yeah, it's been interesting, to say the least. I mean, we all, you know, it's like...
that's a nice way to put it.
Well, yeah, you know, it's like, you know, anybody that's our age probably, or where were you at 9/11? Right. Where were you, you know? Right. It's like, I remember where I was. And, you know, I think with that, I was actually skiing in Vermont when this all last year in February with a good friend. And, you know, we went up there and I'm skiing and I'm like, you know, my wife's like, yeah, this thing's kind of growing, you know, and I caught a plane back from Burlington, Vermont. And, you know, next thing you know, it's like, you know, and it just was a ripple, you know, right when it all went down, you're like, okay, well, I guess they're not gonna play basketball. Okay, well, I guess the NBA decided they're not, you know, and, you know, Tim Duncan or somebody, well, what? You know, like it just went nuts. But I think with everything, and not to venture off the subject, but, you know, my dad and I had a plane crash 5 years ago.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And as an entrepreneur, and I didn't even know this was happening, I think that as an entrepreneur, you've dealt with so many things. You've dealt with so many employees. You've dealt with so many COVID type things, and not COVID maybe, but just a lot. And they keep coming at you, and they come at you, and they come at you. And my dad and we took off 5 years ago. We were headed to Tunica to stop, and then we were going to go on to Atlanta. Got to 9,000 feet. I was flying. My dad was in the right seat. Heath, my partner, and the guy that worked for me, Ross Ingram, was in the back. And the engine started sputtering, and it started knocking, and it got worse and got worse and got worse. And the prop froze mid-flight, 9,000 feet, single engine plane with no engine. We're in a plane that with 80 gallons of fuel and people is not very long, So you immediately go, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
What's next? I'm like, okay, I'll go to Marshall, Arkansas, 38 miles. You got 22 miles to go. Not making Marshall. Air traffic controller, go to Russellville. So immediately when something happens, you think options, right? Okay, what are my options? I can't make Russellville. He's like, turn to Russellville. I was like, I'm not going toward Russellville. There's too many trees and mountains over that way, and I'm not going to make the airport. I got to find something soon. Found a place in Hector, Arkansas. There was a little road that ran down the street, and I just looked at my dad and I said, I'm putting it down right there. And, I've been trained for that. I was like, I guess it was 19 or 20 when I got checked out in that airplane. And so we're going down in there. We get in and I was kind of in a good spot to get in this road, but there was a power line you couldn't see till you got there.
Oh.
Had to make a decision to pull up or go under it. Split decision, make a decision. And I knew if I pulled up, I'd lose airspeed, maybe stall and kill us. I was like, we got to go through it. So I just dove the nose, went through the power line, yanked the power out to the whole community.
Right.
Hit the ground, right gear collapse, front gear collapse, and we just skid down this little county road. Down in a ravine, hit a pole and stopped. And I just remember going, look at my dad. And I kind of nudged him. Like, you all right? He's like, yeah. I look in the back. They're all right. And I'm like, all right, we lived. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm hurt, in shock,
Right.
So, there's some fuel. We can smell it and we're hurrying. We're trying to get everything shut down and get out. My partner, Heath, he couldn't get the back door open. So he jumps through the front of the cockpit, hits my dad in the head of his elbow, slings open the door and just starts running down the road. He just like, I'm going. We get out of the plane and we're out of the plane for about 5 minutes. And literally my mind went, all right, we're going to need a van or we're going to need something to rent. We got to be in Tunica, so-and-so, Atlanta. We're still fine. We're going to make it. I couldn't even kind of comprehend yet that we crashed.
Right.
My mind was already on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's entrepreneurship. And I think when COVID started, it was like, okay, all right, we're in the delivery business.
Sure.
Okay. We don't cook food for the most part. Our food comes off of our make line, goes through the oven. Anything that would be on a pizza would be burn off through 480 degrees, whatever. We don't touch the product after it's done. It's in a box that's sealed and we're delivery. We might do all right here. We might be just fine. So we immediately talk to our employees, make sure that they understand where we're at. We start talking masks. I mean, you have to do all those things and you put steps and measures in place. You listen to corporate. All of a sudden, corporate's having a podcast or a little meeting about every week. Here's what we're thinking. And so you shift to that. We go no contact delivery. So we have gone to that where customers can pick that they don't want, no contact. We know delivery is going to spike a little bit. So we're going to have to add drivers.
That was an understatement. I mean, spike.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we knew that. And we knew that it's a delicate subject with employees. Depending on seasons and stuff, we employ 160 to 180 people. Out of those 180, let's say, I would say 100 to 120 of them are under 21 years old. So you're dealing with youth. You're dealing with lack of knowledge. There's a lot of media that's saying one thing, saying another. You've got to have one uniform message. And the leader always has to say, we're going to be all right.
Right.
We're fine.
Yeah.
We don't have an engine, but we're going to land over here.
Yeah.
And we're going to be all right. And we're going to get out of here and learn from it, And I think that, what they can't hear is fear. What they can't hear is you're scared. What they can't hear is unknown. We got it. We got it. Even if you do or don't. I mean, you kind of got to have that. We're going to be just fine. So, we've made a lot of shifts in people. It's been a tough year. I mean, it has, we one thing with our business is, I'm a bootstrap entrepreneur. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just trying to figure it out. Probably a mistake I made that I wish I could have done a little different is we Papa John's grew in the 90s and the early 2000s, and we kind of came into the multi-unit game in 2010 and after. Well, they had already kind of picked out Little Rock, Jonesboro. We couldn't get clusters of store. What you want is 8 stores,
right?
10 stores in Memphis, where you can borrow employees and move food around. Well, we're at Mountain Home.
You're all over
we're all over the place.
Yeah.
And we're a 2-hour drive to get store to store. Well, the bad about that is if you have a store that has someone get COVID, everyone's around them. Well, you just lost your whole staff in Hot Springs or in Mountain Home.
Right.
Well, it's not like you can borrow them from another store, right? Well, so that was a negative. So we had a couple stores shut for 2 or 3 days, clean things up, figure out who was exposed, who wasn't, get back open. We've dealt with that for a year, and that's been tough. And I think the other piece, but the positive, and this is kind of something I think too that entrepreneurs have to be able to do is see both sides. Mm-hmm. You have to be like, okay, but wait a minute. By being spread out, guess what doesn't happen? If you have 8 stores in Memphis and you start sharing employees and you start borrowing them, then this store gets it and this store gets it. And this
spreads
now
like
you got
wildfire.
5 stores or 6 stores with it, where when we had one, we're down for a couple of days, but it's only one of the 8 stores. So that was kind of like a good thing. So sometimes like the way you're set up can be good. There's pros and cons to everything. And
Sure.
so, but it's, we've had a good year in sales, a really good year in sales. It's been amazing there. I think Papa John's, it was a tailwind for Papa John's. We have a new CEO and John's kind of gone after a couple of years. We've dealt with some of that. I mean, sometimes in the franchise world, you deal with things that you didn't do. We are kind of at mercy of what they say and what they do.
Sure.
I'm a lot happier to have Shaq than John, let's put it that way. At this point, and I am. And so we got a great CEO now. And actually he was at Procter & Gamble for 2.5 years in Bentonville.
Okay.
So he's not from here, but he knows the area.
Exactly.
And so he and I've gotten to talk to him for about an hour here about a couple months ago. And that was awesome. And I think his direction, along with some COVID tailwinds of sales, I think we're in a really, really good spot, man. And, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of goes down. I mean, we're still guessing as we go. We were just talking about Branson this morning. We own the store up there. And it's like, what's Branson going to do? Spring break. Like, you don't know because it's like, is there a real spring break or is there not? I don't know, so anyway, hopefully that answered.
No, it does. It really does. I appreciate you sharing that. I was writing down because just so this idea of always have a plan, right? And I always think back to Glenn Ross. It's one of my favorite movies when Alec Baldwin's talking about always be closing.
Coffee's for closing.
It is. And you got to have that mindset in that closing, it's like you've got to be ready and able and willing to do it whenever the opportunity presents itself.
Absolutely. And I think, I thought about this earlier when we were talking, and I think it's worth saying is, we're talking business a little bit here, right? I mean, there's culture and there's other, I get relationships, but when you're talking business, I think, what value do you provide? And I think anyone listening to this call right now, if you work for Walmart or you work for JB Hunt or you work with Shelter or you own your own business, what do you provide? Are you valuable to your organization? Yeah. Because if you're not, I'd worry about your job.
Right.
Look, we got to have results. One of the most cutthroat things I've ever seen is an NFL quarterback. They get one shot. They come out of college. There's always a new guy. I mean, think of all the people we've seen, been the Heisman and all this stuff. And it's like they get one and maybe a second shot.
Yeah.
And what they say is go 24 of 32, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, and we'll give you $10 million.
Yeah.
Don't do that, and we're going to cut you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world.
Exactly.
Welcome to business. It's the way it is, man. I mean, and I think the quicker you understand that sometimes that is the value you provide to a relationship you have with Walmart or JB Hunt or Papa John's as a franchisee, right. and it's not all about that, but it is about that. I mean, we're Razorback fans. I mean, it's been a lot more fun the last couple weeks.
Absolutely.
Than it was 4 years ago. Right. I mean, it just is. And, in the SEC, it's like, you better win 8. You got to, in football, you got to win 8.
Yeah.
8's the magic number to stay.
Yeah.
If you're at Auburn or you're it doesn't matter anymore. I don't think Kentucky will accept 6 or 7. Right. You got to win 8, man, so, and it just results. So,
yeah, no, yeah. You said a mouthful. I mean, there's so much there that I could unpack. I want to be respectful of your time because I appreciate you really taking time to share with this audience. If somebody is listening to this and they're thinking about moving here, what would you tell them just overall, not necessarily from a business perspective, but you could certainly share that as well. But just coming to Northwest Arkansas, what can somebody expect coming here? Because I know in 2014, and the reason why I always ask this question is because when I came here, I didn't know what to expect. As an African-American, I wasn't sure. I mean, Arkansas is a different state. My friends said, "Why, you're crazy for moving to Arkansas." And I had no idea. If I knew then what I know now, it would have been the easiest transition of life. But so what would you tell somebody coming here for the first time to Northwest Arkansas specifically?
I think that I would say it's the best of all worlds. I say that like you get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
We're not a beach town.
Right.
We're not a mountain town.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily a lake town down here, but we have lakes, or we have a lake. And I would have said 20 years ago that, we could be behind times, not as progressive, just a little town in Arkansas. Walmart has taken that away. I mean, we're progressive now. I mean, you're up there with the words of Amazon. You get everything. I mean, you get cold, you get warm. We got cold the other day. Everybody knows that.
And then it got warm again.
Yeah, and it's right back. And the cost of living is awesome. It's easy to get around. Mm-hmm. It's, 20 years ago, you pretty much had to go to Little Rock or Springfield to catch a flight, or Tulsa. Now you can fly out of here. The last 20 years have developed this place into you kind of got everything you need. But I'll say this, look, if you're an extremist and you love 10,000 foot mountains, it's not the place for you. You like the beach, not the place for you. If you want a direct flight to Jackson, Mississippi and, Topeka, Kansas, and you want to be able to go to South Dakota right out of X&A, it's not going to happen, right? But if you want to be able to catch a flight, probably get a stop in Dallas or Atlanta and get wherever you need to go, we have that. And so like you got an amazing aviation community. You got 5 airports around here. We're growing, we're booming. Like it's just, I don't know. It's a really good central spot in the U.S. to get, affordable place to live. Is safe. I mean, that's one thing I can say. I have 4 acres and built a house, and like I'm a guy. I love safety. I love just to feel like I'm safe. I feel like my community's safe. The people around me are that way. I think that's here. I just really think that's here. And I love an SEC town. I was 40 minutes from Oxford. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of sometimes feel sorry for the people that live here that are like Kentucky fans. Right. It's going to be a long road for you, man. I'm sorry. It just is. Yeah. Because everyone here is going to have a Razorback belt on.
Exactly.
Well, I had gone, think about this though. I went to Senatobia, Mississippi, 40 minutes from Oxford. Right. Everybody has Ole Miss belt on. Right. Everybody. There ain't nobody not hotty totty down there. Right. And guess who they had just gotten when I got down there? Houston Nutt.
Oh, that's right.
So they took our coach. We kind of, whatever, everybody can have their opinion. And they're like, we got you, coach, And then, I mean, and I was the Kentucky fan in Fayetteville as the Arkansas fan in Senatobia.
I got you.
But, I tell kids all the time, I'm like, man, the youth here helps. The youth helps.
Yeah.
This is, and we're the place to be. Like, if you live in Arkansas, everybody wants to get to Fayetteville.
Exactly.
As kids, as parents. I mean, so I just think there's a ton of pride. I just love it. I mean, I think it's not, again, it's not a big city, but it's not small.
Yeah.
And that's what I love probably the most about this place is like, there's just enough density to have a Dixon Street, but it's not the crime and the things you might see in a Detroit or Memphis or something like, this, all that kind of blended together for me is I love to drive in every day. I live out by the Blessings and I just love that curvy road.
Exactly.
I almost love that I have 15 minutes to think on my way in. So I don't know. It's what I know. I mean, it's what I know. And you're a Razorback fan and you're from here. And so anyway.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I mean, you kind of perfectly nailed it in terms of that experience. Lastly, when you're not having pizza, where do you go to eat? Where do you like to eat here in Northwest Arkansas? I always like to ask a food question. So, and I'm sure you're kind of a foodie and you like good food. So
I do like good food.
You mentioned Herman's earlier, and that was kind of
probably a staple. Haven't been to Herman's much
in a while. I know they're still open though.
So I mean, unfortunately, I watch what I eat. I run 1,600 miles, 14 to 1,600 miles a year.
Wow.
So I run 120 to 140 miles. I've run 7 marathons so far. Okay. So I've been to New York City and stuff. So I watch what I eat kind of Monday through Friday, and I cheat on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So I mean, this sounds bad, but like I love to go to Whole Foods and get a variety of stuff. So like, give me some pizza and ice cream because Saturday's cheating. I mean, it's like I could eat a whole box of donuts.
Sure.
My wife and I would always, when we'd ate pizza, I'm going to give a secret here, is like Giraldi's. There's a Giraldi's pizza. Yeah, no,
Giraldi's is good.
There was a pesto pizza my wife and I used to get all the time and just really love it. I'll give a shout out, like just Cosmos. Love Greek food. The Cosmos owners are like, that's an owner operated business. And that's what it's all about, man. I mean, they're there. He's always making food. She comes walking up to us and super nice. And I'm giving a plug to them, but they're amazing.
Right.
They hire great people. I think their food's good. Yep. So we go there quite a bit.
Okay.
My son loves Angus Jacks. I mean, it's just like one of those things. My son's autistic and he has a gluten-free, bun and a burger with nothing on it. Just the burger and that and the French fries. So that's a staple. So, those are probably my favorites. I'm not a big food guy, but like, I'd say Cosmos is our most staple place we go.
Yeah, so I've been there. Yeah, their fries are amazing and they are really good. And their Greek salad, I'm a big Greek salad person. So they put the right salty olives on there. I mean, they're just right.
Wife loves Indian, and we go to I think it's R&R Curry in Springdale.
Oh, R&R Curry is really good. Mark actually taught me about R&R Curry. I like there, and I like Kana Grill, which is also really good. Right across Kana Grill's right almost across the street from Cosmos.
Okay.
On North College.
I got to check it out. Yeah, we've had it.
Kana Grill's good. So
I love R&R. It's good stuff. So.
Listen, we've got great culture. We've got great food.
Yeah.
And you would think, we're in Northwest Arkansas. It's like, are you sure? But I'm like, yeah, I tell people all the time, the food's good. You come here to visit, I'm taking you out. You're going to see, you're going to, have a great time. I mean, Every time my mom comes here, I take her to Crystal Bridges because I want her to see that, listen. Yeah. And every time she comes, she sees something new. And I'm like, that's what it is.
I think something that can happen to you if you're not careful is you take things for granted.
Yeah.
And you really do. Once you live somewhere a while, and, we have a place in Destin, and I always said I wouldn't move there because I couldn't afford to I love the ocean. I love it. The breeze, the smell, the water. We had a boat there for a while. We used to go to this little spot. You'd go out the Crab Island and you go out Fort Walton Bridge. And we'd go around to this spot, and we had a little cabin cruiser, and my son would play inside, and we could set the boat in 4.5 feet of water, and it was like a Corona commercial.
Sure.
And you could go to this other spot that was down by Herbert Field, just past Fort Walton in Santa Rosa, and you could park in this little real like Corona commercial spot. It was like a little island, and you could park right there in 4 feet of water, and the jets would come in to the airport, to the base, and I'd watch the planes and all these things. But I always said that if I lived down there, that I might lose that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to lose that feeling. So I was like, I'll live up here and we can fly in 3 hours in plane to get there.
And you can appreciate it when you're there.
Love it.
Yeah.
But if I got down there, I think I might take it for granted. And I think we do that here is my point. And I think Crystal Bridges is like an amazing place that like we just kind of, people travel from all over to come see Crystal Bridges and we don't even go.
Exactly.
Like, what the heck?
I know, it's crazy. I'm like, you haven't been to, I talk to people that have lived here and they're like, what? Yeah, we don't go. And I'm like,
well, we even talk about cost of living. I mean, people, I built a house out where we are and we have a pool and nice, and people come out there and, from New York, my buddy from Brooklyn, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, and I'm like, it's not as bad as you think, and so we kind of take that for granted, but it is. And I think the one thing, that we didn't have, and I mean this 15, 20 years ago, is it wasn't as progressive as now. I think we're more of an appeal.
More diverse.
For people, to move here from California or anywhere else. And that might not have been the case 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have to say this one other thing that's, I go back and just, the stories and just remembering, but I met Sam Walton one time and I was young and, I might've been 5 years old, and I never forget this. My dad and I went to a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Bentonville. I don't know why we were there. I was 5 years old, and we pulled up, and I will never forget that Silverado. It was like, I think it's a red and gray 2-wheel drive, or maybe Silverado. It's at the deal. And we walked in, and I remember my dad goes, that's Mr. Walton. My dad's like, I think that's Mr. Walton. And he was ordering in front of us. And at that time, I didn't know, I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, you're fine.
And my dad, but I was already thinking business. I mean, I was already like, hey, Dad, what can we trade this? And Dad's like, Mr. Walton, this is my son, Brant. He's like, how you doing, young man? And he shook my hand. And I'll never, and I something crazy like around here that you just never know, and to think that we have that much of a titan of business that was just an old farm boy from right here, man. It's so awesome. And,
it is.
And he was in aviation, and he was, kind of, just his story of just rambling and going. That's all I've ever done. Is just ramble and go. I bought a car that sported 5 minutes on simulcast just because like I want to keep that edgy, just sporadic thing going. And I don't know, he had a lot of great stories about that. So,
I'll tell this story and then we'll close it out. I think that when I had read his biography a long time ago, and then I got back and I read it again, and I appreciated it even more once I started living here. And a lot of people, I've told people, oh man, just read Sam Walton's biography and, learn about it. And I've run across or run past in the same room with Alice Walton and Stuart Walton and some of the other Walton family members. And it's just what they've been able to do with this community is amazing, and it kind of started with them really. And it has built beyond there. Jones Trucking Line, JB Hunt, Tyson, and the list goes on. And to me, the future is really bright for Northwest Arkansas.
Absolutely. And I would say, one other thing I would say on that note is like, you talked about what could people get from this, us talking today. And the one thing that comes to mind so much is we live in a society that, and literally for 20 to 30 years, we've been about building comfort.
Yeah.
Everything easier. Let's, automatic cruise control, automatic this. And where we learn is on the edge of comfort. Where we learn is when we get out of control, where we learn. And like Sam Walton knew that he had to push boundaries. He had to open in Kansas. He had to open here. I mean, the guy could have had 10, 15 stores, been a wealthy guy and had a twin engine airplane in Bentonville. And that was it. And kind of called it quits. But like, you got it. Like entrepreneurs get uncomfortable. They push themselves into territories that others won't. Yeah. And that's not our human nature. Our human nature is be safe. Oh, be conservative. Oh, careful. But it's like, the kind of adage, scare money don't make money, man. I mean, it is what it is. And if they didn't have that ambition and he didn't want to keep it rolling, probably when people were like, could you slow down?
Yeah.
You have 300 stores. That's not what it's about, man.
Exactly.
Like I got more. I want more. I mean, not more money, just more chances. more territory. I want to meet more people. I want to be in California and Arizona. You just have to get uncomfortable. Yeah. You have to.
Oh, man.
That's where,
you're preaching to the choir, man. I love that. I don't know about you folks, but if you didn't get something out of this, you need to rewind this and listen to it again, because Brant just dropped some serious knowledge and some serious information. And I love that quote. Where we learn is in the edge of comfort. And, I think that is so perfectly true. And I'm going to wrap it up here. We'll probably have to do a part 2 at some point in time, because I'm sure that Brant's going to have some more stories to tell in the very near future, because this man is not allowing any grass to grow under his feet. So, man, Brant, thank you so much for taking the time. You didn't know me, but you knew Mark, and you trusted that, well, if Mark knows this guy, he must be okay. So I appreciate you taking the time sincerely to meet with me and just share your story with the I Am Northwest Arkansas audience. So thank you so much.
For sure, man. I'd appreciate what you're doing too. That it's huge. It really is.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
People don't know a lot of these folks and what they're doing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody's story matters. So, well, folks, that's another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To learn about us or to read or download the show notes from today's episode, visit IAMNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll be sure to put in some contact information for Brant Barnes. If you want to check out, if you need some insurance and you want to check out Shelter Insurance, you'll be able to do that. If you just want some pizza, you can find out where all his Papa John pizzas are. We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes so that you can check that out. Please continue to listen to the podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with all things Northwest Arkansas. You can subscribe to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it. It doesn't matter whether you're on Android or iOS, just subscribe and please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Obviously, our podcasts come out every Monday without fail, rain or shine. It's there for you. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we will see you back here next week with another new exciting episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. We'll see you soon. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IAMNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.